controversial subjects with the facts can be tense, but we are a sub-science here to make things make sense.
Today we are talking about The Last of Us, the HBO hit based on a pandemic that wipes out essentially most people because a fungal species called cordyceps is spread through, they say, sort of like wheat across the world, causing people to become zombie-like and aka spread, once they've been taken over by this fungus, the fungus to other people. It's like a thrilling show. It's based on a video game. It's super popular, but it's also a sci-fi show rooted in theory and science. So today we're going to talk about whether it's possible or not.
And how realistic the show is, as well as even just our take on the show, you know. But honestly, like talking about the science, what's real, what's over the top, what kind of matches what could be reality. Should we expect this to happen to us soon?
Well, it's an interesting timing for the show, considering the game came out before COVID.
Almost a decade ago, the game came out, I think.
Yeah, and like it is about a pandemic through a fungus, which is not something you usually hear about. One thing I'll say is that from doing this research, viruses like COVID spread so much more easily because it's droplets, it's sneezing, it's coughing. Most fungal infections need to be spread through touch. Contact. Like it isn't the most quote unquote like contagious in that sense to go right to a fungal pandemic. But I think from what I gather from what I've seen in the show so far, they make it sound like the fungus is in a yeast that is then used across the world. So they're not necessarily saying it's like through touch.
Right. It's like it's been consumed and that people were infected that way, which there's real life case stories of that happening, by the way.
Yeah, but like fungus being spread through eating it.
Yeah.
Yes.
In fact, there's like some evidence I was reading about the Salem witch trials being related to, not infected, but contaminated food that might have been fungus that made people go like hysterical for like 24 hours.
Ergot poisoning.
Yeah.
Like if you consume that certain fungus, people like can have like delusion and like that is possible in the sense that if it was spread by people just consuming eating it, maybe something we should explain how it actually isn't really that realistic. The show or just that concept? I feel like we need to get focused. Like where do we start here? Obviously it's a really fun show. I've enjoyed it so far. I found it interesting. So there's only 3 episodes out at the time of this recording, but I made 4. Okay, sorry. Oops. I made Greg play the intro to the game. I never owned a PlayStation, but I only ever played like the first few hours of the game in the past. And then we went and replayed it. And it is really fascinating to realize the language they're using that we've all become so familiar with. Like when in the very first scene, when you like go into the TV room and they're talking about a pandemic and quarantine and these kind of things that now it seems so familiar, but when you when you watch something that's actually from like nearly a decade ago, of course, I understand there's like outbreaks and pandemics and things through history, but we're so detached from it and now we're not. Yeah. You know what I mean? I thought that was really interesting. It reminds me of a book I read once where the scientist was predicting the next pandemic and effectively described what we've lived through. And then I read this book after the pandemic had started and was like, this must have been written in 2020. Go back, it was written in like 2016. Well, that's the science for it.
Yeah, you realize
science has patterns. Yeah.
And the nice thing about this show, as I was reading, is they did onboard quite a few like mycologists and scientists to help actually analyze like what are the more realistic paths. Obviously, it's an entertainment show. And so first and foremost, they're trying to make an entertaining show. Yeah. But I think it's cool that they obviously reached and worked with scientists to be like, how can we make reality enter this fantasy world?
Well, okay, so it's based on cordyceps, which is like a genus of a fungus, which famously, I actually made a painting of this fungus because it's so cool. It infects ants and is able to take over the ant's nervous system to make the ant climb a tree, bite a leaf at the perfect height for the fungus to then proliferate from there. So that is obviously fascinating. Many people might have heard of this because it's kind of like a bit pop sciencey. Like I talked about it when I was a teacher teaching science because it's like, what? A fungus takes over your nervous system, makes an ant move and bite a leaf. Like that is crazy. I can see why they chose that fungus.
Yeah, because it's already so fascinating. And I bet lots of people have seen, there's like, I don't know if it's Planet Earth or I feel it's David Attenborough like narrating it and you see the ant walk up the branch and bite and then they have sort of like a time lapse of the fungus like shooting outside of its head.
People say zombie ants.
Yeah.
So it is like, that's the direct correlation. Now what's unrealistic is that it's taken millions of years for that fungus to evolve to infect insects. And so based on the science of how long it would take to infect humans in the same way. It would take like way outside of our lifetime, maybe even the ability for humans to be alive on Earth before. It would take millions of years for evolution to make it for it to be able to infect humans the way it has with insects, because it's done it for so long.
Yeah.
So that's why they're like, it actually can't just like happen.
Yeah, those kind of transitions. And there's a big difference between a fungus and a virus. So first of all, something that always blows my mind is that fungi, first of all, I never know how to say it. Fungi.
Fungi.
I think you can say it however you want at this point.
And also mycologist. I said mycologist, but it's mycologist.
I know, but I like mycologist, actually.
too.
But I said mycologist because I recently was listening to an interview.
Yeah.
And they said mycologist, and I was like, well, I don't want to sound stupid.
Frustrating.
But the fact that fungi is how I'm going to decide to say it, are actually more related to animals than plants. Like you see a mushroom, you see a fungus,
and you're like, that's a plant friend.
Yeah, you're like, it's growing with the plants, it's hanging out in the ground or on trees or whatever, and you're like, that's a plant. But then it's like, no, this is more related to humans or to animals than it is to plants. I just find that always mind-blowing.
And it's also hard to define, like outside. So many animals were like, that falls under the like scientific description of an animal, even though it looks so different than us.
Yeah.
Or a plant, that's a plant, obviously, even though it looks like maybe completely different than other plants. But fungi is its own freaking thing in biology, and it's just like, wait, what? Like, it's like, it is literally its own thing. When you see them, you're like, that is separate from plants and animals. That's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
I can see why this is like a creepy show.
Though I guess interestingly, so are viruses, right? Like they're kind of like their own form. And I was going to bring viruses up because you were talking about, you know, it's not super realistic that a fungal species can just like jump into humans and immediately control their brains. Like, of course, it might be built to infect or wound you or hurt, like, you know, make you unwell. But the idea that it's like slowly adapted to control your central nervous system,
like it does insects,
would take a lot of co-evolution between species together. Whereas viruses, not that they'll ever be able to do that, but viruses do evolve so much faster.
Yeah.
And so why a pandemic like we've experienced is so much more likely with a virus is because their life cycles are different. The way that the speed at which they evolve and mutate and duplicate, all these things make them such better. Is conduit the right word? No, it's not. But such better mechanisms for infecting a human population and jumping from like an animal species to humans and suddenly infecting like the whole world. So
yeah, like deer still have like so much of the original strain of COVID. Like it's crazy. You're like, deer
Isn't
have
that crazy?
COVID.
Yeah.
I know. And you're like, oh yeah. Like it's obviously so much more adaptable. I think that obviously when they were designing this game, they probably just looked into the zombie ant thing and were just like blown away.
And it's a game, you know, like I don't think it's the game's responsibility to make it like so accurate.
It looks so beautiful,
fun, right?
like the way that they designed the show. Like it's so scary that I do think it's going to make people more interested in fungi, which is cool.
Totally. Yeah. I think fungi obviously have become more and more accessible. Like even the conversations around psilocybin or magic mushrooms, and that being so taboo only like a decade or two ago, even research being banned. And nowadays it's like actually kind of cool to be talking about that, to be researching that. There's so much unlocked potential, it seems, like yet to be fully understood and studied. But a lot of neuroscientists and psychologists and psychiatrists and all these kind of people are like, we need to study mushrooms because of their impact on humans. I think it's opened the door.
There's also a theory that I read a book about mushrooms. This is just a theory. It's like one person's theory that is really interesting, that they think the positive benefits of quote unquote magic mushroom psilocybin, which when you eat it, your liver turns into psilocin, which is the thing that actually makes you high. But it does have physiological advantages for depression. It makes your brain work in ways it never could without the consumption of mushrooms. Many people argue that it's quote unquote good for your brain, including Michael Pollan, famous science writer who thinks everyone over 40 should do mushrooms. But anyways, this person thinks that maybe that coevolution was a way for the mushroom to take over our human brain so that we continue to grow the mushroom so the mushroom proliferates.
Like on the surface,
crazy,
I love that theory, if we call it that. There's just part of me that thinks like, then wouldn't we be so much more driven towards them than we are?
I mean, I'm driven towards them. I'm not growing them myself, but I like a magic mushroom.
And also, it's never occurred to me, but do other animals like have hallucinogenic experiences after eating like certain kinds of fungi or mushrooms.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about hallucinogenic, but like animals get drunk.
Yeah, I know they get drunk, but you
On
know what I mean?
fermented
I'm so
fruit.
curious, like, because if the idea is that magic mushrooms, like psilocybin, has evolved so humans will make more, plant more, proliferate it because it's like this wonderful magical experience, then is it so adapted to humans? Because humans are really the only animal. Or do we see, like, you know how squirrels like plant nuts? Like, is there an animal that's like trying to proliferate psilocybin? And if not, is it really that adapted
Just like
to
an
humans?
absolutely ripped squirrel.
Yeah, or like every year, like planting its like mushroom, being like, I'm gonna like help this.
I mean,
grow.
that'd be a great master's thesis. We're always throwing these out. Are there other animals that are susceptible to psilocybin, and in some way are they harvesting them so they can trip out every Saturday?
Yeah, so
I mean, it feels very human in and of itself, but it's a good question.
And I think I'm not in the position to say whether it's true or not, obviously, but I think it's an interesting theory, but it's like, it feels so far removed. It's like, is it really, are mushrooms really tapping into humanity?
Yeah,
if anything, they're much more effective at like working in the root systems of plants
Yes.
to like co-create, like they literally help plants communicate and help feed them, and then they, you know what I mean?
That
like,
means more
they feel much more
proliferation.
integrated
Yeah.
into the plant world than to the human world.
I think it's, to be honest, someone who probably is a mycologist
Mycologist.
who loves magic mushrooms, who did magic mushrooms and then thought of that and was like, well, I'm an evolutionary biologist. I'm just going to say this theory because that's what we can do.
Yeah, it's
And
definitely also, they
interesting.
were definitely high on mushrooms.
Yeah, and honestly, it is interesting. It's like everyone is now growing these specific mushrooms because it makes humans high. You can build all the connections you want. It is still fascinating that a mushroom, or even like popping the pimple of a toad, can make a human have an out-of-body spiritual experience that makes life make sense. Like, that's crazy. and cool.
Going back to the idea of not going right into the grain being like poisoned, but I didn't know this, but LSD and ketamine come from the same group of fungi that we're talking about. So that is to say that
Imagine a bunch of gays doing ketamine started the next pandemic.
literally.
Oh, wow.
But it just goes to show that it is possible to have like fungi that can impact your mind, not necessarily control what you're doing, but change your perception, cause you to behave in a certain way. And the idea that you could consume it and it caused that is maybe accurate. You know what I mean? Not that that's like the main mechanism of transportation. Obviously in the show too, they're infecting each other by like biting and transferring it that way.
And weirdly like opening their mouth and like,
oh yeah,
I kind of don't get that.
it's just kind of cool. Like visually,
it is
I think.
cool. Like their
does it
tongue seems gone.
Reminds me of like it's kind of like Dementors in Harry Potter, like where they just like come up close and they're like, except in this case it's like little tendrils are coming out of their mouth.
The tendrils coming out of the mouth thing, I'm not a mycologist, but it's to me the most like, wait a second. Like
how come no one explained this?
Yeah, or the way that the mushrooms look in the show is really cool, seems accurate. From what I understand, they have decided to take a bunch of different features of different genus of mushrooms and put it all into this one mushroom. So there's spores. There's also like, it kind of moves like a slime mold in the intro. So it's not like this mushroom that in the show they're saying exists. It doesn't exist.
Right.
Mushrooms like have physical properties that this one in the show has all of the mushroom properties, but really like my college watching would be like, okay, they've just taken all the cool parts about all mushrooms and put it into one. But like when that thing, the tendrils come out of the mouth, which if you haven't seen the show, watch it. It's great. But
I can't decide if it's absolutely revolting and disgusting or so cool.
No, so it's well done in the sense that it makes me feel both of those things. But in my head, it was one of the first times I was like, that doesn't give mushroom vibes.
Right.
It gives like, honestly, like, yeah, Dementor. It feels like a stretch. And to be honest, I was like, I thought they'd still have tongues.
Oh, like that is their tongue, you mean?
Yeah. Well, it seems like their tongue's gone and there's just tendrils that open from the mouth. It's really creepy, but it doesn't feel right.
Well,
whereas other things feel more right.
I think there's a level of, okay, the speed at which it's happening obviously doesn't resonate for me, but I think like,
what do you mean the speed of it spreading?
The speed of like the way it's coming out of their mouth.
Oh, I see.
In those scenes, you're literally seeing like it really only happens one time, right? Maybe twice.
I feel like twice.
There's a point where like the one, spoiler alert, by the way, this is like episode 2 or 3, where she kind of like sacrifices herself. She's, you know what I mean? Like to protect them and let them go. Or she's infected. She knows she's going to die. So she waits there. And so she's not fighting back. And it basically comes up to her and like is about to like make out with her, right?
Yeah.
That's what happens, right?
Yeah.
Because in every other case, they're like being bitten because there's not time for like the zombie to make out with them. But in that case, it like slowly goes like and just like goes in her mouth. But I can understand like if there's this fast growth property of it, going down the mouth into the throat and through the lungs like might be the fastest way to infect somebody. You know what I mean? Because I don't understand. Well, I guess I understand being bitten, but I don't see that as necessarily a more effective way for a spore.
No, that is
like in fact, something interesting about fungi is that you're breathing in like billions of spores at any minute.
Yeah.
They're all through the air. They're all around us. Not all of them are harmful. In fact, for the most part, if you have a functioning, healthy immune system, your body just deals with it. It's your immune system. You're in balance with your environment. And it's only when you're under duress or your immune system's down that you'll actually see that these fungi have a problem or cause problems for you, but you're breathing them in all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're always around.
Yeah. 1.5 million people die every year from fungal infections.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. So like 1 billion people, that's a lot of people, will have a skin, nail, or hair fungal infection every year. So that's like athlete's foot. Like obviously athlete's foot, you got a cream, maybe an anti-steroid cream, it goes away. That's not what we're talking about, killing people. But there is like Candida auris, which is this fungal infection that actually is becoming more of a concern now because it's spreading due to climate change in like warmer areas. And so a lot of people will die from that because that's actually getting into your blood. So it's not easy to like put an ointment on your foot. For example, it's now in your blood. And what makes it harder, as you said, fungi is so much closer to humans. Maybe it is more closely related to humans than plants. It's harder to make a vaccine or medication against fungi because it's like it's closer to your cells. So it's harder to make a medication that will kill the fungi, not your cells.
Right.
So it's like actually harder to treat. And it was this Candida auris was only found and like really understood in 2009. And it spreads in hospitals because people who are... it doesn't really, it's not an issue if you don't have like a comorbidity. So in hospitals, it's becoming a big issue and people are dying from this now, where people are already sick. Yeah. So it's like, that is actually scary. That's not a like Last of Us virus that is making people, you know, essentially like become
rapidly
zombies.
spreading through the environment.
Yeah, there's a reason you maybe haven't heard about it, but there's a reason why we should be talking about it more and why this show is actually good for science in the sense that the more that people get interested in fungi, the more about the dangers of it they understand, the more like Candida auris will be understood. Maybe like people will understand that there is a fungal infection spreading through the hospitals currently. It's just not a very sexy thing to talk about. And we're also sick of talking about diseases in hospitals, I think.
Yeah, people are kind of at wit's end of like talking about viruses.
Yeah, but it's like, well, now we're talking about this fungus, which we never would have talked about. This show is interesting in that sense. People are starting to be like, wait, this can happen through a fungus? Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to, not that I would like divulge this on the pod, but I don't think I've ever had like a fungal infection.
Like athletes, when I go to the gym, I see people wear flip-flops. And I never wear flip-flops.
Oh, I think of that all the time if I'm like showering in a public. Even going to a public pool, I'm always like... But sometimes, you know...
But I'm nasty. That's why I'm always sick.
You know what? Sometimes wearing flip-flops in a wet environment is actually more dangerous. Because I'm going to tell you why.
Okay, you're smiling this way where you're like, you're making this up.
I'm not making this up. It's just I know this is a neurotic thing.
Oh, okay. Because I'm like, how?
Because I think about... I'm absolutely disgusted by walking in public water. Like, I don't know why, but when I'm out in like... If I have to walk through a public bathroom and there's like water on the ground and I'm bare feet, to me that's one of my biggest icks. Like I just hate it. But the problem I find is if you're wearing flip-flops and your feet are wet, then they're wet in the surface on the flip-flop, and that's actually more slippery. Like at least the flip-flops that
you're afraid
I
of
have,
slipping. You're not afraid of athlete's foot.
I'd rather wash my feet after being in that environment than risk breaking my neck.
Okay, I thought that you were
I thought about this a lot.
I thought you were talking about the nastiness of the flip-flop. Side note a bit.
No.
Nastiness of the flip-flop, flipping the water up to your like ball sack or something, and then getting like an STI.
No, it's just that when a flip-flop is wet, because they're made of this like plastic or rubber or something. I don't know.
You're afraid of slipping.
Well, I've just noticed how slippy they can be when they're wet.
I mean, they're a horribly designed shoe. I'm disgusting, and I like absolutely tap dance and grovel in like a little shallow pond at like a public pool. Like I love that vibe of being like it's summer and like we're going to the pool.
Yeah,
I want
to clarify.
Never think about athlete's foot, and I should.
I want to make it clear that it's not because it's a public pool. It's anywhere, anytime there's like, even if I get in a shower, like say you've had a shower earlier and there's like the ground is wet.
Oh, okay.
But once I turn the shower on, then it's
well, now you know, because I'm nasty and probably
I'm getting it from you.
I know, and public pools actually are better. We're talking like private ass Canada's Wonderland theme park nasty
or
Disneyland
anywhere.
sludge.
I just mean like even anytime you're by water and it's just on the pavement and you have to step in bare feet in there. Yeah. It just drives me gross.
Well, I'm like, so I don't think I've ever had athlete's foot either, but it is interesting as like a topical fungal like disease, and that 1 billion people get it. Not just athlete's foot, but get skin, hair, nail fungal diseases a year. I was kind of like, that's like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's
1/8
obviously
of everyone.
integrated into like a lot of people's lives. A lot of people have had to come face to face, even if it's just a simple medicine or procedure or like, you know, a cream you put on. Like it may not have been life threatening, but a lot of people have to deal with like fungal infections.
Yeah.
And I know you said how many they kill. To put it in perspective, fungi kill more humans a year than malaria. And we often hear how malaria is like mosquitoes are like the deadliest animal. You know what I mean? But it's actually like, well, fungi. I think they said that
people are starting to probably really think about this a lot more and be more scared of fungi, which you shouldn't, because fungi is also so
No, it's so
cool.
fascinating. I mean, we live in a world.
End of F.
I'm like, how do I say this in a way?
Full of danger.
No, I read an interview by the sort of head scientist on the show.
Fun job.
I was like, fungi, fun job. I didn't know what you were going to say.
No, fun job.
He is like a mycologist, and he was saying the fungi in this case with the ants is actually a really good thing, because without it, the ant populations would be like crazy out of control. Like fungi, everything is kind of in balance, you know what I mean? And that may not always be true, and obviously as humans, we're like very biased to all wanting to stay alive, but the fungi helps to like cull the ants, basically. He was kind of like, ants would overtake the world without fungi.
Wow, that's cool.
And I just thought that was interesting, that it's like, don't be scared of them, because in general your body's in like a perfect balance with the things around you. And I shouldn't say perfect balance.
Well, also the concept of biodiversity and climate change is really interesting, because we're just obliterating the quote unquote concept that you're talking about. Like, the biological niches are so important, but as we increase the temperature of the planet, the niches, which are meant to be niche, are now becoming obliterated. So certain fungi will prosper, and then other fungi will not be able to maybe keep that fungi in line. So it is like the part of the show that is a little bit alluding to this being a climate change issue is accurate. The timeline's interesting, because it's like the outbreak happens in 2003 and the show takes place in 2023, which I think is cool. So it's like an alternate reality to now. But they do try and allude to climate change. And I think one thing that is worth thinking about is that what you just mentioned is that like everything is in balance, but that balance is now being thrown off, like
heavily
climate
disturbed
change.
and very quickly on a Earth scale.
And I think what we now all know about viruses and climate change is like, essentially we are now, through factory farming and a variety of like biodiversity degradation, living in much closer quarters to animals. And that's where these viral vectors happen, that it's like very, like that book you said about the pandemic. Like I think right now scientists are like, there will be another pandemic that will happen quicker. Like this is all going to get worse. And it makes sense through climate change.
That is like one of the big factors. And like you said, or like I said, and then you said about the balance, it's worth thinking about, because it's not just the imbalance of a one factor. Like, yes, you can see it, you know, using the show as an example. Say the temperature of our Earth on average raises, it provides an opportunity for a certain species to proliferate more. But that one temperature degree of change affects everything. It's not just like one species. It's like the entire balance of the world's ecosystem can change and really fast in a way that we don't really know how it's going, what it's going to do, and what windows of opportunity it leaves for viruses, what animals, humans, like which disadvantages it leaves for all those species as well.
And we don't even really know all the fungi or the insects that exist on the planet. Like we don't know them all. So like what's even happening to the ones we don't even know about, because we just haven't been able to define them.
There's another fungi that I thought was really cool that is in this same domain.
Champignon.
What was it called? Massospora cicadina.
Oh, and welcome to the stage, Massospora cicadina. Death drop.
They're called zombie cicadas. You know, like a cicada, like the insect that goes
Yeah.
like, that one.
Accurate.
So basically, the mycelium of the fungus fills the cicada's abdomen and replaces its reproductive organs.
What?
And then it induces a sexual craze in the insect so that it will spread the spores to other members of
Okay,
its
The Last
species.
of Us, we haven't finished the game or the show, but are the writers listening?
Yeah, it's like, is there a sexual craze at the end?
Because it is, both people are from Game of Thrones, so if they're going to get sexy and there's going to be dicks out, you know, we can maybe hope for The Last of Us.
Yeah, because, you know, one thing that's interesting about any sort of parasite or virus is like, even with COVID, it's a fine balance of like killing the host, that you don't want to be so deadly that you kill the host.
Yeah.
You don't want to be so not deadly that you're not transmissible. And obviously a sexual transmission is almost more smart. Not necessarily more smart, but you're not destroying the creature. I mean, in this case, it is replacing its reproductive organs. So perhaps on one level it is destroying it.
Destroying
but it's
it,
like,
goddamn.
you know, instead of having to run from zombies, it's like you're falling in love with zombies without knowing. And then
There's
you're
another
infected.
version of The Last of Us that, I'll say it now, could be deeper. That could be about that type of fungal infection. That's
and then-
through a more human relationship. Like the world where the HBO does a great show about that, where it's like an actual like interrelational drama where the guy's like dick becomes a fungus but he loves the girl and the girl.
Dicks look like mushrooms.
Yeah, I mean, and
Maybe
like
they, at the end of it all, we always were.
and they love prosthetic dick at HBO, so they could do really gorgeous artistic design with like
Gorgeous.
the fungal dicks and the fungal vages and the fungal everything in between. It's like it's a good concept.
Yeah,
And it would-
maybe, I mean, we've still got like 5 episodes left, so maybe they're going to touch on it.
And more, because isn't it gonna have a season 2 if everyone's watching it?
Oh,
And
fair.
Is the game? Do they have to end, or are they gonna do like Game of Thrones and do their own
I
thing?
think there's a
and then
sequel
ruin
of the
it?
game.
No, but I don't know if the first season's gonna do the whole game. Probably
Oh,
not.
yeah, probably not.
It's,
You're right.
I will say, rather slow.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the actual show.
Okay, because and we're also gay, and it was like, okay, it became Brokeback Mountain for a second. Truly, like tears on the couch.
I initially was skeptical because
You were. It was surprising.
it's like a decade ago or more that Walking Dead came out, which I liked at the beginning, and I never liked
a zombie show.
Yeah, I never disliked it, but I kind of fell off because it kind of felt like the same thing was always happening over and over, and it just sort of felt like this idea feels like a decade late because there
Which
was
idea?
so
The Last of Us?
yeah, just
Okay.
because I felt like at that time so many things were covering that. So that's what I was skeptical going in. I was like, I don't want another show where they're just constantly running from zombies. Like, I don't mind it, but if it's just like every episode and now they get away again and now one of their best friends dies and
of movie. Like, it's true. I've seen so many zombie movies.
And there was a time, kind of like there was a time when all these like big, after Lord of the Rings, it was like everyone was trying to make huge budget war movies like Troy, and like they all looked the same at the end of them.
Yeah.
I felt like there was a zombie era. So I felt like this missed it. But I will say after watching the first couple episodes, I was like, it is a different take.
Well, it's interesting because I remember like zombie, like there's been the comedy takes of zombie, which I really liked. So there's the what's it called? Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Then there's like 28 Days Later, and like
Right.
this, which is horror, and this falls into those, like to the serious,
Right.
the scary,
Realistic, quote unquote, yeah.
Whereas I remember like Zombieland, and then there was like that other one that were comedy zombie takes, which I actually was like, this is amazing because this is a different. So
Yeah.
you're right. This is falling into like, okay, I've seen this before because it's serious. It's not. There's truly zero humor, like at all. In fact, the last episode there like was sort of humor, but it was really actually placed as like a relationship growing. It wasn't funny.
Yeah.
Which I actually don't like. Like it's very one note. Kind
Yeah.
of.
I feel like I would say first episode, I was like, oh, actually, it's a bit better. Second episode, I thought, oh my gosh, this is actually a really interesting show. Like they've done a good job. Third episode was so gay, so I was obviously into it. But
The third episode, okay, so the first 2 episodes I thought had incredible action scenes that actually got me hooked. They did a bit of the Children of Men, Alfonso Cuarón, the director, but they didn't cut. Like there were some really like expensive long take action shots that I was like, okay, I'm in, because I love that. Like I'm in for this. The second episode, I was scared, like screaming more than like 28 Days Later or Walking Dead. I was like, that was an effective, expensive action scene. The third episode was, what is it called in TV when they like
break away from the norm?
Yeah, there's like a word for it.
I forget. Is it when it's self-contained?
Like a like I remember like girls did it once, and I was like, she's a genius, because she just like went to a cabin once, and all it was the cabin. But I'm like, okay, like HBO obviously loves that, and like I'm pretty sure Lena Dunham didn't invent it, but and it was about a gay love story that set up essentially them just like getting in the video game probably more materials like guns, and so it was kind of, I thought, interesting in the sense that it was like a short story.
I like, even outside of it being like gay, obviously I know there's been,
it
like,
does
some
help for us
controversy.
that it was gay.
It helps. But no, I think like that was a cool change of pace, whereas episode 4 I felt was a bit of a snooze.
Yeah, very boring.
And I don't mind a slow episode. Like the gay episode, as we'll call it, was pretty slow. It wasn't that there were some like high energy like battle moments,
and there were some hairy chests,
but I guess I'm trying to say I don't mind an episode being slow, especially if it's like giving an interesting perspective on, I actually never thought about this angle of the extreme version of a pandemic or of the world ending and humanity having to deal with this. And because that's been done so much, like, you know, you have like I Am Legend, you have Station 11, you have like so many end of world, or like even, what'd you say, the one where they can't have babies anymore?
Children of Men.
Children of Men. Like, there's a lot of movies that do it really well that I'm like, I want to feel like, oh my gosh, I never thought about what it would be like to live that way.
I think that's what the third episode, Gay Brokeback Mountain episode, did. I think it kept me being like, this show is great. And I will say, after the fourth episode, and please get in touch with us on Twitter or Instagram, I'm starting to doubt the show, because it was actually, in my opinion, so boring. And I think they were trying to build the relationship between the man and the little girl, and I kind of thought that it was falling flat. I think they're really great actors, especially the little girl, that it's like, okay, they're doing a good job, but I feel like this writing isn't that strong. Whereas in the third episode, I was like, holy shit, I feel like these actors and writing work so well. I just was introduced to this character and I cared deeply about them. And I think if they were like a heterosexual or any other couple, it would have still worked. It was like very well written. And I think the fact that they were gay made it way more interesting, because the main man was sort of a very quote unquote straight identifying like prepper dude. So the fact that he was gay just added like a level of like vulnerability that was like really interesting to see. But I still think it was written and directed in a way that was like, it didn't matter. It was just well acted, really beautiful storytelling. Yeah. And also a different take on like the mundanity of what it would be like to live alone and like eat a straw. Like, it was just well done. The fourth episode, I was like, oh God.
Yeah, it hasn't made me lose faith. It was just a filler episode. Yeah. Which there always is. Even like shows, like I used to love Game of Thrones, and there would always be like weeks where you're just like, oh, and like literally nothing happened, and there wasn't even like a good conversation.
Okay.
Oh, but over
I'm
the
not
course
used to that.
over the course of like 6 seasons, you're like, you know, the good ones are coming, and they can't give you an epic episode every time.
Yeah, why
but
not?
I was just like, because it becomes redundant.
But like,
right?
we've gone from 22 episodes a season to 8. I'm like, I don't know, give me every single one good. I don't know. Is that too much to ask from HBO?
Well, because they're
like with their crazy budgets.
Then they've got to be more creative, because it can't just be them running away from zombies every
But that's
time.
why I think I was a bit concerned, because I'm like, I do want them to be
like already in
high quality
episode
in their
4,
own way.
Yeah, you should be creative enough to
and I
give
feel
us...
like that third episode, I was like, holy shit, they're being really creative.
Yeah.
They're trying to create a zombie show that is rooted in relationships and like depth, and not just the fact that they're zombies
scared
everywhere.
Yeah,
which is really interesting. And I think from just starting the game, I was like, clearly that's what this game's doing too. It's built so narratively. Like, I just spent most of the time stoned watching like a movie and was like enthralled. And then actually when it was like, you have to fight a zombie, I was like, I can't, please don't.
Crying.
I was like crying. I was like, I can't. I would rather just sit here and watch a 3D video game than you making me have to press A to kill a zombie, because I just can't handle that.
It's really scary to play games like that.
Yeah, no, I was like, I actually like forgot. Like,
I don't know how people do it.
I'd be like, oh my God, the game broke, and then you'd be like, Greg, you have to run. I'd be like, I have to run.
Literally, also, Greg will be watching a cutscene, and then when it goes from cutscene to just like it's actually you playing, and I don't want to like tell him what to do, so I'll just sit there. minutes will go by and it's just like the back of the character just like slowly like phasing from side to side.
Because I was like, there's no way in hell you're expecting me to have autonomy over this thing. It's too scary. It's too scary. It's too real. And I honestly like I can't say this with any ounce of like strength because I don't play video games, but I can assume and understand why the video game would be better than the show. Because I was like, this is a type of experience I can't even, my body physically can't handle.
I think, did I cut you off? Sorry.
Or I was just saying like, it's so narrative as a game and so similar to the show that I could see how someone who like video games would like the video game more because they get to like participate.
What I was going to add to that is I think that is why sometimes videos can be the ultimate form of media.
Video games.
Yeah.
Video games.
Because it's just like, I obviously television can be amazing, movies can be amazing, but like when you have a game that can be cinematic, like you can feel what it feels like. And games are getting better at it. Obviously, graphics are getting better, and storytelling and the capacity for games to have more because they can fit more on their like hard drives or whatever. But I just think like there's something so immersive in a game that when you've also spent like a TV show might be 8 hours, but a game might be 70. And you might be able to spend way more time playing it too, and actually getting to know characters that literally die. And like
I don't have the physicality of video games because I've never played them. I find them so overwhelming, and that's sort of the indication of how overwhelming and immersive they are.
Yeah, because I
feel
can't real.
Even,
it's too
and
stressful.
It's like, I wish I could because it's like that is the ultimate immersive experience over life. I mean, sorry.
That game's
next
too
to
scary
life.
for me, actually. Like, I couldn't keep playing it because it was too scary. Like, I don't like games where I'm just always scared that something's running from behind me.
But that's
even
also
in real life, in the dark, I run up the
though.
stairs because I'm scared.
Yeah, no, but that's cool because it's like I hate, like I went and saw Megan and was like, snooze alert, this isn't scary. Like, I love being scared. I need to play video games.
I love scary movies, yeah. I find like even Metroid is a video game that I'm just like, I'm too scared to play it.
Metroid Prime?
Yeah, well, there's like times when you get scary music and you're like, those fucking demons are here, and I just run always. Like, it's too scary. That's why Zelda is the perfect game for everyone.
It can be scary too.
It can, but it's the perfect amount. Like, you can also just be wandering and not worry that like some creature's gonna kill you at every moment. That's beautiful. I think we should go back a little bit to.
Like, we have to wrap up.
Yeah,
soon
we'll
too.
wrap up soon. A few things I want to say. One caveat out there of like, how realistic is this? The question is, why can't the zombies see? Like, why would a fungus fully learn and evolve to control a human's... Because
they can only hear?
Yeah. Like, why would it learn to control a human's central nervous system, but not use our main source of
That's a
feedback?
Definite video game / movie trope.
And I get it. It's fun. It makes
fun.
it scary. It's like Tyrannosaurus Rex like being right there and being like, don't move, it can't see you. And it adds for tension, but there is an element of like, why would it not be able to use human eyes?
And when they like did that in the show, when they were like, don't move, they can't see you, I was like, wait, what? Like, it kind of even shook me. I was like, oh, okay, we're doing that one.
Yeah,
like,
it makes it a little easier.
Yeah, it makes it easier for them to build tension for sure. But you're right. It's like, what?
And I have a quote interesting from that same man who was kind of like the lead scientist on consulting the show. And it's about ants versus humans. I'm going to read it to you. He says, the problem with human society is we act selfishly rather than collectively. So ants are really good at controlling cordyceps because they have that collective immune system inside the colony. They can even wall off their collective siblings who are infected, and the sibling is completely fine with this because her genes are the ones who are in the ones who are going to survive, and it's happy to be walled off. But people aren't happy to be walled off.
Yeah. Well, but I mean,
ants truly form and work as a colony, and obviously humans do too at the large scale. Like,
if you look,
if you're an alien,
it
looks
like they're working together. But like deep down, we're like, kill the Trump supporters.
Yeah, and I'm
like,
sure
I'm
sure there's some ants that are like, screw the gays.
There's like the like far right ant movement who are like, don't wall us off. But like, it is why humans are so. I mean, that's just the constant plight of the human, so intelligent yet so dumb at the same time.
Right.
Like, it's like we're able to think about the past, the future, and the present, and it makes us so complicated. And like, we're not going to wall ourselves off. And that's why the show is interesting, because it's like, it is about relationships. And from my understanding, like reading an article about the show, the writer and the people involved were like, played the game and were like, this is such an immersive game. Like, I think the game changed, quote unquote, video games.
For sure.
I think they made Naughty Dog is the name of the company that made the game, and apparently they made a game before it that everyone loves, which led to then this game, The Last of Us, also being good. Everyone was like, oh, look at Naughty Dog. They know what's up. But it was a thematic game that I think the fact that it's a show, there's a lot of pressure on it doing well.
To live up to the game.
Yeah. Rather than like
I don't think there'll ever be a Zelda-like property, but it's like anything that has a big name as a game, it's like a book. Like it can be done really bad as a film.
But there's so many video game movies that are just like, it doesn't feel like people put.
There's so many?
Yeah.
Like what?
I don't know.
Name one.
Oh my God. Well, there was that new one with like Tom Holland. It was like generic. Oh, what was it
I guess
called?
you're like, I'm not saying there aren't. Sorry, I didn't mean to like put you on the spot like that, but I think that Last of Us was one of the biggest games of the last couple decades.
And wasn't it
even I didn't
because
like,
it was cinematic, like it was like based as like a movie kind of.
Yeah, like now games. I can't say because I never had a PlayStation. I've always been a Nintendo boy. But I think that was
Uncharted.
Oh yeah. Oh, they started with Uncharted. Cool. And didn't the new Uncharted just come out?
No, that was the movie.
Oh,
like with Tom Holland, that everyone was like, "This is so bad."
Yeah,
that's based on a video game.
Yeah, I knew
like
that.
it was like a generic action film trailer I saw, and I was like, "Oh, that looks dumb." And then my friend was like, "That's a video game," and I was like, "What?"
Right? Yeah. Okay.
Or
that's
Tomb
fair.
Raider.
Yeah. Okay.
Like you know what I mean? Like these are
Mortal Kombat, terrible movies, but so good also.
but it seems like sometimes when Hollywood comes a calling, they are
know what it is?
Getting the properties from what?
It's HBO. It's just actually HBO's really good.
Well, okay, but no, but is what I'm trying to say. It's like those video games, it feels like Hollywood is tapping in to make money.
Yeah.
And I feel like HBO has the pressure to be like, okay, we have to at least fool people into thinking that we're trying to make
critically
good.
acclaimed, yeah.
And it's an interesting choice of video game because I think from the get-go it was thematic and different and maybe
and already did that
or
as
whatever.
a game. Yeah.
So the pressure to me is like extra high on the show in some ways. And I'm watching it and I am like hoping it can pay off, but I'm like, it is going to be really hard, I think, at the end of the season for everyone to regroup and be like, was it worth it?
Yeah. But I think that's the challenge of anything that comes from another source material.
Yeah.
Like especially a book, because you're always like, how can a movie or a TV show do a book that has 600 pages justice?
Yeah.
All these character dynamics that you like spend literally weeks and weeks reading about or years even. So they've done a good job so far.
Yeah, I'm
I think
really curious.
I'm not
I love
attached-
the gay shit.
Love the gay shit. Can we get more gay shit?
Yeah, honestly, and also it was like,
You know what I want? Is
What?
an infected gay story now. Like
Yes.
two of the like, and they're just subtitled the whole time, and it's just like a love story between two cordyceps.
and then we can have our cordyceps mushroom prosthetic dicks that we want HBO to make, even in The Last of Us.
The mushroom dick just grows and infects.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like HBO can do it. They have their 18 plus.
Oh, man.
They got Euphoria on the track. Like that show's crazy. Okay, thank you so much for listening.
Yeah. Hope, I don't know. Do you have any questions about this? Like,
No, but next week might be lubrication. Also, if you like, make sure you share our episodes with your friends and family. If you know anyone who, I'm copying this is another podcast. And if you know anyone who doesn't listen to podcasts, you help them, you set them up. You say, this is a laugh and a half, and you learn lots of science. It's called Sidenote Base Up Science. Share this with your friends, family, and your mom.
Okay, we'll see you guys next week.
Peace.
Bye.